the Vedantic Center in Nebraska. We welcome you all. Let us start with a prayer at our temple prayer. Om Kalpadrumam Pranamatam Jagadeka Bandhum Sarvatra Samsthit Sarvada asatoma sadgamaya tamasoma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya om shanti shanti shanti. Namaste again. Sri Ganeshaya Namaha, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. It is indeed a pleasure to be here on a, let's call it a wintry December afternoon. Thanks for taking the time to come. Due to the COVID, we have not been able to organize any events or lectures of Vedantic Center properly. So to the extent that now, hoping that the pandemic is coming towards some sort of let's call it end, I guess, optimistically, it is a great feeling to have at least one event in person. So at least that will start something. And then we can start inviting scholars and seers from outside Omaha and have some more elaborate events. So today, today's talk is going to be something very, very basic. So it's going to be the basic foundations of the Upanishads. And then I will be inviting the real presentation, the person who's going to give the real presentation, Dr. Sanjay Singh. He'll be talking about the connection between Upanishads and neuroscience. And so I will try to build up the presentation till there, and then he will take over. At any point in time, if you wish to ask any questions, I think you feel free to ask questions. I have to start by admitting that I am not a Vedantic scholar or an Upanishadic scholar. I am just like many people, I'm just a student. So I've read a lot of commentaries of the Upanishads. I have not read the actual Upanishads. In the sense, I've read it, but it's all in Sanskrit. It's way beyond my grasp to understand the nuances. So I've read a lot of commentaries, starting with Swami Vivekananda's commentary, followed by some other commentaries. But the commentary that I really liked very much, which will actually be a part of my presentation today, is the commentary by Sri Aurobindo. And his commentary, I felt, was the one that connected very closely with me. Now, Sri Aurobindo was very good in the sense that he brought up the interpretations of Adi Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and once in a while even Madhvacharya, and he talked about the conflicting commentaries. So it's the same Upanishad, but different seers have given different commentaries, at times conflicting with one another. So that is, it is what it is. It is way beyond me or any one of us to resolve those conflicts, so that is never going to be an issue. So, excuse me. That's okay. Do we need two microphones? Okay, thank you. Okay. So, whenever we start with a discussion about Upanishads, the first person we always give obeisances to our Guru.
Mic is not working.
Okay. Closer. So we give obeisance to our Guru, and you can, oops. So it goes like this. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadi Lakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. What does it mean? So, he who has attained the bliss of Brahman, the supreme joy, so Brahmanandam, Paramasukhadam, he who is pure, that is free from any kind of delusion, who is the embodiment of wisdom, Jnanamurtim, Dvandva Titam, so who is beyond the duality that exists of I and the Supreme Lord, who is beyond that duality of the world. Sky high in spirituality, Gagana Sadrisham, he whose attention is on I am that, Tattvam Asi, and I'll come to that in a minute. Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam. So one who is with divinity, who is eternal, without impurities. So Vimalam, without impurities. Achalam, who is immovably established in truth. He who is witness to everything. In other words, he who is omniscient. He who is beyond emotions, beyond the three gunas that we have of sattva, rajas, and tamas guna. So, person who's beyond all of that, salutations to that Sadguru. So, we have received this wisdom from our Sadgurus, so we pay respects to those Sadgurus. And with that, we can start with some broad basics before we jump into the Upanishads. So, Sanatan Dharma, which is Hinduism. So, when you think about the scriptures, the most basic scripture that we have are the four Vedas. So Vedas, Ved means knowledge, and knowledge of what? So if you think about all the four Vedas, at least what is encapsulated is knowledge of the universe and how one should live within that universe. What are some ways of life within that universe? Okay, and within the Vedas we have the Upanishads. So an Upanishad is a subset within the Vedas, and I'll get into more detail of the structure very quickly. So Upanishads, the meaning also, I'll be discussing it in more detail, but some people, some scholars have said that the Upanishad basically means to sit closely, as if we are drawing near to the person speaking so that we can listen to something which is very important, the instruction which is important. So that is one meaning, but we will try to unpack this and see what are some other interpretations of what Upanishads are. Okay? So again, as mentioned, the Vedas provide the broad strokes, so something very big about how the universe works and how one is to respond within the universe. And the Upanishads, on the other hand, they give instruction on the specifics. So they get into some more, a lot of specificity, which when we get into some Upanishads, you will realize how real specific things they can talk about. Okay? So the Vedas and Upanishads are part of what we call a Shruti. So in Sanatan Dharma we have Shruti and Smriti, but right now we are focusing on Shruti. So the idea is that we have had this oral tradition of the Guru Shishya Parampara. The Guru will orally give the instruction to the Shishya, who will then one day become a Guru and give it to his or her Shishya, and it just goes like that through ages. A lot of Western scholars start giving a date for when a certain Upanishad was written. Now that date is almost irrelevant because it's basically merely the date when someone might have transcribed it on a pine leaf, that's all. But that doesn't mean that that is when the Upanishad originated. So you can see a lot of Western dialogue between which Upanishad is older, which one is more recent, which one is not an Upanishad, all on the basis of dates. And we have to keep in mind, let us ignore dates completely because everything is truly part of our oral tradition. Okay? So it is wisdom and insight that they contain that appears very profound to have originated in the mind of a human being. So that is the thing about the Vedas and the Upanishads, is that it is it's almost impossible to believe that a human sat down and started, coming up with these ideas. Okay? So again, as I just mentioned, they were all orally preserved for a long time, and then at one point in time, a few ashrams, a few hermitages started transcribing it. Okay? So as most of us know, there are 4 key Vedas, and then within the Vedas we have Upanishads. Overall speaking, there's a dispute between 180 and 200 Upanishads exist. But when we say the best known, which are the 13 Upanishads, they are best known because those 13 are clearly embedded in these 4 Vedas. Okay? So that is why we call them the best known. But there are Upanishads who are beyond those 4 Vedas. And that is due to, again, a lot of seers, a lot of rishis having come up with their own Upanishads, which again are pretty similar to the original, let us say, 13 Upanishads. Okay? So when we talk about the Vedas, there are 4 parts in each Veda. Okay. It all starts with the Samhitas. That's the real meat of the Ved. And that includes the mantras, the benedictions, the prayers, and so many things. So when you talk about Vedic studies, if you want to learn the Vedic aspect, then most of the attention is given to the Samhitas. Now, that alone is not enough. After the Samhitas, we have the Aranyakas. And that is, again, rituals, ceremonies, okay, and some symbolic yajnas, sacrifices. Now, the Aranyakas just describe what the rituals are, what the sacrifices or yajnas are. It just describes the process. Now, there has to be an interpretation of the Aranyakas, and that is what we find in the Brahmanas, which are the interpretation. Why do we do such a yajna? Why do we do such a sacrifice? Why do we chant a certain mantra? Those discussions are in the Brahmanas. So the Brahmanas are also part of the Vedic literature. And then the last one, the final one, as you would have guessed, are the Upanishads. And that would be something discussing some metaphysical, spiritual aspects. So meditation, philosophy, spiritual knowledge. So the Upanishads are the 4th and final part of each Veda. So each Veda has a certain number of Upanishads embedded, as I have mentioned earlier. So, which gives us the meaning Vedanta, which is what the Vedantic Center of Nebraska is. So, when we talk about Vedanta, we are really talking about Upanishads. That is the heart and soul of Vedanta. Now, that's not the only thing in Vedanta, but that's the heart and soul. So, the Upanishads are referred to as Vedanta, and the question could be, well, why? There is a very obvious reason, and then there could be a philosophical reason. So we'll start with the factual reason, because as I mentioned, they are the 4th and final part of each Veda. So therefore, it's the end of the Vedas would be the Upanishads. That's why we call them as Vedanta. Many Western scholars focus on that aspect, that is Vedanta. But when you go to the scholars, the seers from India, they focus on the philosophical aspect of Vedanta. Why do we call it Vedanta? Because they say that if you have finished the studies of Upanishads, then you have finished your Vedic studies. So that's the end of all your Vedic studies. That's the Vedanta, the final comprehensive exam, if you will. That is the Vedanta. So this slightly, again, I'm not saying these two are at conflict with one another, but the Indian seers focus on the philosophical aspect of Vedanta. The Western ones focus on the factual. Does it matter? Perhaps not. But anyway, the idea of Vedanta is they complete the sacred revelation received by the sages at some point in the ancient past. So after the Upanishads, apparently there isn't much more that needs to be received, is what they say. That is it. If you have understood all the Upanishads, that's enough. Now, of course, we know that there are many more scriptures beyond all of that, but one thing that you will see when you read those other scriptures is they have grasped lots of ideas from the Upanishads, and they have enhanced that, expanded on that in different ways. But the heart and soul of these other scriptures emanate from the Upanishads, many. Okay? So, Upanishad. Now let's unpack the meaning of the word Upanishad. We just talked about it on the first slide. But there are 3 words. The first is Upa. So it means to go closer, to move closer, to move nearer. Okay, fine. But closer, nearer, what? To what? And it is to the truth. That is the ultimate objective of Sanatana Dharma, is the journey towards the truth. Okay? And therefore, upa is to go closer to the truth. Again, Western scholars would say closer to the teacher. Okay, so they are literally talking about a physical manifestation where the teacher is sitting and they want the students to sit closer to the teacher. Okay, move closer to the teacher so that they can basically give attention to what is said. In those days, we did not have microphones and all of that. So if you want to sit in a hermitage and listen, okay, come closer. Okay. And the idea, I think, is important, is that it's not just physically moving closer to the teacher, but to dissolve any kind of obstacles that might exist between the student and the teacher. So remove all these obstacles so that you can listen to the teacher in a very unabstracted manner, without any reservations, without any mental reservations. Okay, so first is commit yourself towards moving closer. The last part is shad. Okay, so shad means to sit. Okay, fine. So is it physically sitting in front of the teacher? It is more to do with the settling of the mind. So let your mind sit. So remove all your, again, your thoughts. Our mind, as you know, it wanders around so quickly in so many directions, so many dimensions. So just calm it down, bring it, so start focusing. That's what the idea is. So to sit and then be completely receptive to what is coming from the teacher. So shad is to sit, but it's not just physically sitting, but more of the mental aspect. And ni, which is the one between upa and shad, okay, what is that? It's basically the level of sitting. What kind of sitting are we talking about? So again, this prescribe that the student should sit at a level, at a mental and physical level lower than the teacher. Now, physically, you could still sit at the same level, that's not a problem, but mentally, unless you sit at a lower level mentally, you are not willing to receive. If you already believe I know more than the teacher, then, find something else to do and go to another teacher perhaps. You have learned enough from this guru, okay, find another guru. But if you are still sitting in front of one guru, it means you better be receptive. So that is the idea that is being described here. So again, to remove all kinds of ego from the student. So any kind of student for the Upanishads has to remove all kind of ego, be receptive, come sit closer, both physically but more importantly mentally. And then you will be able to receive the wisdom from the guru. So that is the meaning of Upanishad. Okay. So if you want to comprehend this meaning further, it is basically the teacher and the student, or the speaker and the listener should sit down together with the intention of moving closer to the supreme truth. And that, again, as I said, is the ultimate goal of Sanatan Dharma. So Upanishad kind of encapsulates that goal of Sanatan Dharma. Okay? And how is this possible? How can you accomplish this properly? You accomplish it when you have complete humility on both sides, the teacher and the student, the speaker and the listener. Okay? And give complete attention. There will be noise all around. Try to eradicate that noise mentally from yourself and focus. So put away all the obstacles to listening. Okay? And when I was growing up, in my school, we started every day with this prayer that you see on the screen. So we also chanted in our temple every day after the Ganapati Puja is done. Towards the end, the final benediction, we say Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahe Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So that is from the Taittiriya Upanishad, and I'll again get into that. So I'm not giving the exact word-to-word meaning, but the essence I have presented on the screen, and that is basically the teacher is saying, let us sit together, let us cooperate with each other. So this is the beginning of your studies. So let us sit together and let both of us be protected. Okay? We should both be nourished, and there should not be any quarrel among us. Now that doesn't mean that the student can't challenge the teacher. Yes, that is part and parcel of Sanatan Dharma, that nice Vad Vivad tradition of debate. That is there. there, so that's not a problem. But when you're debating, debate with humility. Okay? Debate so that both of us can get closer to the truth. So you help me and I will help you. So it is always that kind of dyadic kind of nature of Sanatan Dharma, as opposed to, I have said it, you better listen to it. If you don't listen to me, then you are, what is it called? You'll go to some place which is unpleasant. Okay, so let us not say that. So, but here it is more about, let us discuss, you don't have to believe in what I'm saying, but I received that knowledge from my guru who received it from that seer. So if you don't feel that's the right thing, okay, let us debate it. So there's a very healthy debate tradition in Sanatan Dharma. So now getting into the Upanishads with that background and that foundation of scriptures and where Upanishads are, there are the four main Vedas, as you can see on the screen. And as I have mentioned earlier, each Veda has a certain number of Upanishads towards the end. So if we count those main ones, then there are 13 main Upanishads. Now, there are some minor Upanishads, and most of those Upanishads focus on a certain deity or a certain tradition. So the more common ones are the ones that focus on the Shakti tradition, some which focus on the Vaishnava tradition, some on the Smarta or Shaiva. So those are there for sure. There was, for example, there's a Mahanarayan Upanishad. In some parts of India, that is supreme. That is so important more than anything else, fine. But if you focus on just the Vedic aspects, then there are these 13 that you can see on the screen. And I can assure you that if you can go through these 13, truly after that, perhaps, arguably, you don't really need to worry about the 14th one. Okay, I think all the knowledge is embedded here. So I have highlighted some of these 13 Upanishads, and those are the ones which are extremely popular even among these, and I'll be focusing on them. Now, having said that, there are two, which maybe three, which are extremely important, which I am not going to talk about. First is the Chandogya Upanishad in the Samved. That is very important. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and the Taittiriya Upanishad. Those three itself, each Upanishad, just to talk about the basics, might perhaps take 2 hours time just to focus on the basics. So maybe if there's another Vedantic lecture in maybe January or February, we can investigate those three. But for today, very quickly, I'll give some highlights of these 6 Upanishads that you see, and we'll start with perhaps the most commonly cited Upanishad in many, let us say, discourses across the globe, and that would be the Isha Upanishad. Some also call it as the Ishavasya Upanishad. Okay, and Ishwar, Ish means ruler, master, Lord, God. Okay, and the key essence of this Isha Upanishad is the emphatic unity between the man and God. Okay, so there's no duality. So this is again a very, very fundamental aspect of Sanatan Dharma, is there's no duality between human and God. Okay, and as a human, what is your role? It is to perform your karma. Do your job, do your duty according to the dharma that you have adopted. Okay, and basically understand that there is unity. That again, this is not me, that's not you, but there's a unity of spirit, unity of soul. Don't believe that you are alone ever, because you are part of a whole, and a whole is that important thing. Okay, so it starts with this very powerful line called Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat. Okay, basically that supreme being pervades everything here and now. So that's the first line of the Ishavasya Upanishad, which very clearly says everything, God is everywhere. That supreme being is everywhere. Okay, and this is where Schrödinger, the Austrian physicist, the Nobel laureate, he said that the Ishavasya Upanishad is what gave that final trigger to figure out that quantum mechanics in his equation, is from this line which says that that supreme being pervades all that appears to move, so the animate objects for sure. But what about the inanimate? So is there God in a rock? Is there God in soil or something like that? Something which is inanimate, the chair. Okay? And that is where Ishavasya Upanishad says that yes, there is energy in everything. And that energy, the source of that energy is divinity. And apparently Schrodinger clearly then writes about it, that from that he realized, oh, so there must be that vibration, that energy out there in everything. So in all matter, all kinds of matter, particulate matter. So quantum mechanics, and even for that matter, Heisenberg also talks about it. And I would recommend, sidebar, on Prime Video, watch Copenhagen. So Heisenberg versus Niels Bohr. Their dialogues are pretty interesting. A lot of Vedantic dialogues is embedded out there. So you will realize that the ideas are coming from the Ishavasya Upanishad. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevānupashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tatot na vijuguptsate. Okay, what does that mean? It says that he who sees all beings in his own self and his own self in all beings does not feel any revulsion whatsoever. So there's nothing about this is who I am, that's who you are, and there are some barriers. You are different from me, I'm different from you, you are of a certain nationality, ethnicity. No, you cannot have those divisions or those distinctions. So anyone who says that, they are in that illusory stage of Maya, that they don't understand the essence there. Okay. So again, this talks about the unity, the divinity out there that pervades everywhere. Okay. Now let us get into the second one, Kena Upanishad. This is, again, a lot of Western scholars have studied this. Kena, by the meaning is, well, by who? Okay. So what does that mean? So one thing to keep in mind when we study the Kena Upanishad, we are not singing the praise of God or any being. Now, in Ishavasya Upanishad, clearly they are saying that there is that being, but that is the supreme Brahman. Okay? But it's again it's a series of dialogues between the students and the master. That is Kena Upanishad. And the student is asking the teacher a lot of questions. And then the teacher is trying to answer, and through that they're trying to go closer and closer to the truth. Okay? So the question is, who is behind all this activity that goes on within the personality I? The student is asking. So, okay, let us unpack that. What does that mean? Okay? So by whom is my mind activated? Who's activating my mind? Who is booting that CPU up there? Okay? And when I say I think, who is it that says that I think? Am I speaking, or is there someone else behind me speaking? Who sits behind my mind and gives the initial thought of I think? So where are the origins of my thoughts and my actions thereafter? Okay? So where does that thought originate from? Is it coming from within me, or is there some other force or power? Okay? What is it that initiates the first emergence of life? So again, a lot of questions. The first movement of life, which is prana. Where does prana come from? Where does that originate from? So some very, very fundamental questions are asked by the students. Okay? So the teacher has to, of course, give responses. If the teacher is not giving a response, then, well, you know how helpful that is. So the teacher says, well, there's something that lives in all that lives. It is hearing through the ear, thinking through the mind, speaking through the tongue, seeing through the eye. So all the senses that we have, which we believe are autonomous, that is, we control it, there is someone else that is controlling all of that. So, okay, so describe who that is. So, Kena, who is that you're talking about? He says, well, that which makes your tongue speak, but which no tongue can explain. So, you can't explain that. That's what the teacher is saying. So, there is something that is making your tongue speak, but I can't tell you, what that is. The sense is difficult. That which makes the mind think, but needs no mind to think. Okay. That which makes the eye see, but which needs no eye to see. In other words, our eyes are kind of limited. You can't. And that which makes the ear to hear, but which needs no ear to hear. That which makes life live, but needs no life to live. Okay, so there's something out there which is giving us all of these directions and all, but we can't, it's impossible to describe that, impossible to think about that, impossible to see that, hear that. The idea is that the moment you say that I can describe it, it means it becomes something finite that you're describing. But that Brahman is infinite. So the moment you say something about it, you are completely negating the concept of Brahman by saying what it is. So you have to say what it isn't. That is the whole point here. So that alone is the spirit. And one who says that I know my spirit, it means they don't know. And one who says, I don't know it, maybe they know it because they're clearly accepting the fact that I can't describe what that is, what that spirit is. So again, that is kind of a dialogue which keeps going on between the student and the teacher. Finally, the student gets exasperated. What is this? I mean, come on. You are not telling me anything. You are saying there's something out there and I need to know that. Well, you will know that one day. And I can't teach you, I can't tell you that, but I'm giving you the path. And then once you are on that path, you will get there one day. So that is what the teacher says. So it's all about Kena Upanishad. Who is that we are supposed to be thinking of, that we can't think? So some interesting facts is that this is the first Upanishad, perhaps the only Upanishad where Uma comes in. Till then the Upanishads have talked about other gods, but the first time Devi, Shakti is coming in directly, and the name that they are using is Uma. Okay? So it's a story where, I won't get into the details of the story, but three different gods. So it starts with Agni. Agni goes and tries to have a dialogue with a Yaksha, a spiritual being, and then comes back exasperated. Then they send Vayu to talk to that god, the wind god. The Yaksha doesn't engage the wind god at all. Then finally Indra goes and talks to that god or to that Yaksha, and then even Indra is unable to understand who that Yaksha is and then gets exasperated. Who is that Yaksha? Who is that person who is so powerful, so supreme, and all of that? The reason is that they had just fought a war, these devatas, the Indra, Vayu, Agni, and others, and they won. They had a victory. So they were all thinking, it's all because of me, because of my power we won. This was all about how great they felt they were. And they were just enjoying that victory of how awesome each person was. Saying, oh, Indra, what you did was awesome. Oh, Agni, what you did was awesome. Oh, Vayu, oh, yeah. So they're all talking about themselves. And then to eradicate of that power that, hey, it's not you actually. You are exulting in someone else's victory actually. It was, who is that victory? It is that God's victory, that Brahman's victory. And you are feeling it is your victory. No. So Uma was sent to teach a lesson to these three. And Uma is the one who tells Indra directly, wow, really? That all your powers, you feel you're boasting about yourself, but the reality is that it's not you, but you are just the instrument. That is all you are. Remember that. Okay. So all of you have attained greatness, yes, but it's a gift from that Supreme Spirit. Don't forget that. The moment you start thinking this is because of me and my achievements and my hard work and my, that I comes in place, I, that ahankar, then ego, then everything is gone. Anyway, so Uma is the goddess who comes and then teaches that truth to Indra. And Indra is worshipped and respected a lot because he was the first to receive such knowledge from God directly through Uma. So the Kena Upanishad therefore has a very powerful place in our Sanatan Dharma. So ultimately, Kena Upanishad, it rejects the concept of intellectual pursuit. That's the key. Your mind, you can study, but you will not realize Brahman through your intellect. That's what they say very emphatically. Okay? So if you want to pursue spiritual truth, intellectual pursuit is not helping you. You can understand Brahman only through self-knowledge, through personal spiritual works. But sitting in front and learning as much as you can through your mind, that is not going to help you. That's what Kena Upanishad states very clearly, that the only way to know the self and to realize him yourself, is through meditation and through your own personal spiritual journey. Okay? So, anyway, if you pursue something intellectually, you'll achieve something, but that you'll achieve only intellectually. But there is an intellectual end. That's it. Okay, you get to a PhD or whatever, that is it, or MD or whatever, which is important, of course. So the Kena Upanishad is not denigrating other pursuits. No, they are just saying that through intellectual pursuit, you want to understand spiritual, the goal. So and the teacher can't help the student directly experience the spiritual. The teacher can only give you the instruments and show the path, but it has to be your effort, your journey. Then you can achieve something on your own, at your timeline, whatever that takes. So here, that's why the Kena Upanishad is very empowering, where students go to the teacher and say that, hey, I don't like you as a teacher because you didn't give me anything. I didn't experience God. What kind of worthless person you are. You claim that you have experienced God, but, well, touch me, make me experience God through your touch. Well, the Kena Upanishad gives a very clear direction that, sorry, you will experience God through your hard work. The teacher will only give you the direction. Okay? Which brings us to the third Upanishad, the Kathopanishad. It is perhaps after the Taittiriya Upanishad, the Kathopanishad is the most widely studied Upanishad in the world. Lots of Indian scholars and, of course, Western scholars have studied it. Katha means distress, okay? And it is a story. That is what this Upanishad, it's a story. It's a beautiful story between a little boy, Nachiketa, and who goes and meets the Lord of Death, Yamaraj, Yama. So, in this Upanishad, it emphasizes the importance of living in the present. Live today, live for now. Don't think too much about the past and the future. And trust me, every morning when I wake up, I think about that. Let's live for the present, because we carry a lot of baggage of the past, and people like me are worried too much about the future. And it's so easy for me to stand here and say, don't do that. But everyone is on their own journey, so you guys, it's up to you. But the Kathopanishad, I would say, is perhaps for me the most important one, because it is constantly telling me, hey, if you want to live a nice life, you know what, just live for the present, okay? And it also offers opportunities to examine what the Atman is, okay? And, how is the Atman? We have an Atman, how is that related to the Paramatman, the concept of moksha and self-actualization? A lot of lessons are embodied in the Kathopanishad. That is why it is very, very popular, okay? And if you think about the Bhagavad Gita, which came way after the Upanishads were, let's say, revealed, the Bhagavad Gita borrows lots of themes from the Kathopanishad directly. And when you read the Kathopanishad, in my case, I've just read the commentaries, as I've said. I mean, you could see a lot of similar themes, okay? So when we talk about this story of Nachiketa and Yam, so Nachiketa, I won't get into the whole story, but anyway, he was sent by his father as a gift to Lord Yam. Go there. There's a story behind it. So anyway, Nachiketa goes and he waits for Yamaraj for at least 3 days. By the time Yamaraj comes, he says, oh, you have been waiting outside my abode for 3 days. That is, very kind of you. So I'll give you 3 boons. Ask for any 3 boons and I'll give it to you, because you came and you were sitting for me. So the first he says, Nachiketa, okay, return me to my family and please make sure my father is calm, because out of anger my father had basically sent me here. But when I go back, please see he's calm. Okay. And by the way, I told my father this story too, but that didn't help much. But that's okay. The second one actually is very, very important. Although people focus on the third boon quite a lot, when I was in my university education time, the second one was emphasized by one of my teachers. So this is basically where Nachiketa says, okay, tell me, how do I perform yajna? Okay, what are the ways to do that? And because ultimately I want to secure heaven. So help me, what yajna do I need to perform so that I can reach heaven? And Yama then says, okay, that's a very profound question. Sure, I'll tell you how to do it. And he gives all kinds of details about how to perform that sacrifice, in terms of even how to lay the stones for the yajna, what material are needed, and all the qualities you need to possess before you perform that yajna. So he says, anyone who respects the three bonds, we have three bonds between ourselves and the mother, ourselves and the father, the teacher, and we do three kinds of karma. So rituals, studies, and charity. Those are three most important karma that our faith tells us to do on a daily basis. And this Upanishad encapsulates that, and Yamaraj himself tells us through this story. And see, the key word, he says that if you can do all of that and understand the knowledge within these karmas, then you'll be free of sorrow, is what he says. He doesn't say you'll attain heaven. He'll say you'll be free of sorrow. But that is the idea of heaven in our faith. We don't have a place called heaven. We don't have a place called hell. That is not part of Sanatana Dharma. So what is heaven is if you're free of sorrow. So you have the power to be free of sorrow. And that is a very important lesson that we have gleaned from this Kathopanishad. Now the third one that he asks, Nachiketa, is what happens after a person dies? You are the lord of death. So tell me, okay, you go, you put a noose around someone and you yank them here. Okay, what happens to that person? Does he continue to exist in another form or not? And that was a very profound question. And Yama is stunned. Why did you even ask me that kind of a question? So the question is there life after death? Now, those of us who are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, we know the answer because Lord Krishna clearly describes it. But prior to that, it was given here. So first he refuses to grant that boon. He says, no, you're too young. You're a kid. You're like 4 years old or something like that. I mean, you have a long life to live. Why don't you ask me for a lot of wealth, a lot of elephants, a lot of cows, a lot of this? I mean, ask me all of that. And he says, no, I want you to tell me the answer to this question. So the boy refuses, and Yamraj is kind of pleased with that insistence, that determination. Okay? And says, wow, you are not distracted by those worldly pleasures. That is amazing for a kid of your age. So he says that this is the thing that we all are familiar with, where he says that there is no death because the soul is immortal. You all know that, right? There is no self because all is one. Again, comes from the Ishavasya Upanishad also. And no one is ever alone, nothing is ever finally lost, and everyone eventually will return home to God. So this was first enunciated in the Kathopanishad, and as I said, it was expanded upon in other scriptures that we have. Okay? Which leads us to Prashna Upanishad. Prashna is a question, so there are 6 specific questions that the students ask of sage Pippalada. I am not going to go into the 6 questions, they are all profound questions, but just to give some idea about it, the questions relate to, again, how does life begin? So existential questions that one is always thinking of in spiritual pursuit, okay? And this is also an important Upanishad because they talk about the nature of meditation and how do I gain wisdom, so not intellectual but spiritual wisdom. So there are themes which are intertwined in a lot of these Upanishads, okay? So it focuses on devotion. This is the first Upanishad of the principal Upanishads where we talk about devotion. Now in Gita, of course, we talk about devotion quite a bit. But this is the first time where devotion starts coming in, okay? So if you are devoted to that spirit, you love that spirit up there, then, you could liberate yourself, okay? So there are a few things that are inspired by the Upanishad. First is, may we hear only what is good for all. So yeah, let's hear something good. May we see what is good. May we serve you. So they're expressing love to the God, to that supreme being. Okay? And may we be used. So please use us to spread peace around. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So this is the first time where we are now basically sharing that, hey, there is an aspect of love that could come between ourselves and that supreme being. So when you think about the 1600s and 16th, 17th centuries in India, the Bhakti movement, which was very popular, they all got inspired by the Upanishad. And some of them actually even talk about how they have therefore realized that it is important to just sing the praise of God, express your love, and today perhaps the Hare Krishna movement is also somewhat of an embodiment of that same idea. So Upanishad has a very important role in the Bhakti movement of the Middle Ages and contemporary times. Those who just do the Nagar Sankirtan and bhajans and all, for them, they are in some inspiring their ideals from the Upanishad. Two more left, then Dr. Singh comes up. So, how are we doing? Should I accelerate big time or should I slow? I don't know how is.
Good.
Keep it going. Okay. So Mundaka Upanishad, Mundaka, and then the last one is Mandukya. And by the way, he'll be talking in more detail about Mandukya. It'll be a segue to him. Okay. So Mundak. Okay, Munda. Shaven head. Complete. So this is. Okay, it will be very clear as to who has been inspired by the Mundaka Upanishad. Okay, we'll show that in a minute. So it is mainly followed by the sannyasis, those who have renounced everything, shaved everything, and just go on. It's tough for us to live that way, but so the idea again is very similar to the previous Upanishads we have talked about. So the idea of this Mundaka Upanishad, this is very tough as a household person living in a family to be focused on those spiritual pursuits. So, since it's not something you can do, so just, renounce it, take care of all your obligations, renounce it, go shave yourself, do all of that, and then start your real pursuit, okay? And again, the focus is on the personal spiritual knowledge here, okay? So, this is a very important and interesting concept that the Mundaka Upanishad provides us. That's why I wanted to talk about it. They talk about two kinds of knowledge that humans should pursue. Interesting. So, by the way, a lot of Western scholars have also caught on to this big time in some of their commentaries. They say there's a para vidya and apara vidya. Okay, para is higher knowledge. It is defined as self-actualization, that's spiritual pursuit. Okay, so what is lower knowledge then? What is apara vidya? And this stunned many of us. Basically, if you study the Vedas, that is lower knowledge. So this is saying that even by studying the Vedas, it's okay. Study the Vedas. But that's not the higher knowledge, that's lower knowledge. Interesting. So studying the Vedas, linguistics, rituals, logic, Vyakaran, all of those things we are studying, that's all lower knowledge. Oof, why are we going to the university? So all our universities are giving us lower knowledge at best. Okay, so higher knowledge should be the goal. That is self-actualization. For that, you don't need to go to a university. Be on your own path. Find your own path. Okay, so the idea of knowledge is what really was unpacked in the Mundaka Upanishad, and a lot of, as I said, scholars have grasped onto that. Now, the lower knowledge is not unnecessary. That's the key. Many scholars, Western scholars, have therefore discussed the idea that lower knowledge is not necessary. There are some spiritual movements in India which also say that, going to school is unnecessary. All that is lower knowledge, irrelevant. Mundaka Upanishad does not say that. They just say that's lower knowledge, but hey, it has its place. So therefore, yes, all of us who have gone to universities, which means all of us here, sure, it's not that we have wasted our time, right? But there is an existential purpose of self-actualization, because we have stopped there and we are difficult to move on to the path of the Paravidya. That is the problem. Okay? So again, very similar to the other Upanishads, is again your own spirit, your own individual effort. Okay? And again, we are not alone, we are all part of one single thing. So the themes are kind of intertwining with each other, as you can see among the Upanishads, which are again based on the Vedas. Okay? So all of us, according to this Upanishad, are on the exact same path, but except our journeys are kind of different. So the path is the same, but I am here, you are there, you are there. I know Dr. Kaushik is way up there, yeah. So that's okay, but the path, he's showing it to us. Our gurus have shown us the path. Now we are just trudging along. And once in a while, some nice, noble souls are helping us, but it is still our path. Okay? Now, interestingly enough, when we think about India, our motto of India is Satyameva Jayate. So Satyameva Jayate Nanrutam, that is embedded in the Mundaka Upanishad. So I'm very proud to say that Mahamana Madan Mohan Malviyaji was the one who suggested that we should adopt this as the motto of our Indian constitution and Indian nationhood. So Satyameva Jayate comes from Mundaka Upanishad. Which brings us, drum rolls please, to the Mandukya Upanishad. And that is going to be my last Upanishad. Mandukya Upanishad, why is that important? Why is it beautiful? Is because it is the shortest Upanishad, only 12 shlokas. People like me, 12 is good, man. If it is 28, like some others, it gets too complicated. So, the beauty about Mandukya Upanishad is it discusses the meaning of Om. And that is its main contribution among a few other things. Okay? So other Upanishads did not discuss it to the extent that Mandukya discusses it. And it asserts ultimately that Om is Brahman. Om is a manifestation of Brahman, which is whole, and that Brahman. So when we are chanting Om, we are literally being part of that whole. So it is a symbol for what was, Bhuta, Bhuva, Bhavishya, everything put together. And it describes 4 states of consciousness. Now, let's look at those 4 states. The first is the state of awake, that we are all awake right now. That's Jagrat Avastha. We're all awake, so sure. Okay, that's one level of consciousness. Then let's say we go to sleep. There's a dream state of consciousness that we have. And the reason I'm not getting into details is I'm assuming Dr. Singh will be getting into more details here. The third stage is the Sushupti stage, where we are in the deep sleep. So in the dream also we are active. Our hands are active. We are speaking a few things. Of course, not that we are comprehending at that. At that moment, everything seems real, of course. But once you wake up, you say, oh man, I had that dream. Was I slapping my younger brother or younger sister? Who was I slapping? Oh, maybe the younger brother, of course. Okay, so then you go and tell that brother, I slapped you. How did that feel? And that guy will start crying. You slapped me in your dream? How bad of you? Now, we know that nothing is real, but we just start to think, oh, there was something real out there. So we don't have the full knowledge of things, but we have some knowledge. So we know it happened. Sushupti Avastha is where we have no knowledge. We are just a pure deep sleep, and when we wake up, that was nice. We had a good restful sleep. But you know you had a restful sleep. But when you were in that state, you did not know what was happening. Okay? It's only after that you knew something happened, that it was restful. But while you were in that, it was absolute state of sleep. Now, each of these 3 states, the Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti, they are finite. So we are awake for a certain time, we have a dream for a certain time, we are in that deep sleep for a certain time. So something starts, something ends. So there's a finite nature to that. But what is it that strings through all these 3 states of consciousness is the 4th one. So when you say Om, The last one is there's a silence. That silence aspect is the turiya state. That is pure consciousness which is drinking through this. So that is the witness that is with us through all states of our consciousness. Okay, so it is where we are pure bliss. That turiya is pure bliss. Okay, so the self is always full of bliss, which is the fourth state. It is the witness of all the other three states. So when we say tat tvam asi, you are that as in you are that turiya state, where you are completely unafflicted by anything, any aspect of your consciousness, or whether you are sleeping, you are in difficulty, you are in this. No, there's that fourth state up there which remains pure by itself. So in conclusion, what is the essential message of the Upanishads? There's a changing there's a changeless reality behind the changing, which is Brahman. Brahman is that turiya state, which is infinite. It is not finite of the waking state, dream state, or the deep sleep state. Okay? So though that Brahman is beyond the mind and beyond the speech, though it has no form or shape, though it is any form, it is beyond any form of conceptualization, the Upanishads are convinced, and they state with absolute conviction that you can realize that state. And guess what? Here are the tools, and that's the path. With those tools and that path, you will realize it. And when you realize it, write a commentary on that. And that's how over the years people have written commentaries. And that's how we know that people are reaching that state. Ramana Maharshi writes it very eloquently and beautifully about that state. And he talks about the tools that he received to reach that state. So there are many seers and realized souls who write about it. So what are the qualifications that are required in a student of Vedanta? Of course, be able to discriminate between what is real, what is unreal. Maintain a spirit of detachment from the world, and have the capacity to control sensory perceptions. We are the prisoners of our five senses, and we believe that anything which is beyond that five is unreal. It doesn't exist. But what the Upanishads are telling us is that the five senses are just not going to get you there. Okay, because there is something there. So you need to have that intense desire. If you're just banking on those five senses, then you are not going to get anywhere pretty soon, anytime. So therefore, go beyond that. Have that intense desire to attain self-realization and moksha. So I pay obeisance to my Guru, Sri M. Ji and Sachidananda Ganapati Swami Ji. With this invocation benediction, Sachidananda Rupaya Krishnaya Klesha Harine Namo Vedanta Vedyaya Guruve Buddhi Sakshini. Namaste. Thank you for your time.
Maybe a 5-minute break.
I am done exactly.